here we go.
Welcome to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back in to the 9 Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott, we are in week number 6 here in the NFL, which means bye weeks. Dun, dun, dun. Boo. Always seems like you lose who you most love, maybe at the worst possible time, and that's always a killer. We'll help you navigate definitely now the start-sit concept, as well as we touched on earlier in the week with the waiver wire. Now that's really going to come to roost. Mostly, I think everybody's roster is kind of where they think it needs to be, or at least I should say they know where it is. Maybe if you're a playoff contender or not. If you want to blow it up, you want to just fine tune it and add that maybe championship piece to your roster. But that being said, again, we are looking at some times where your best players aren't going to be taking the field, which means then you have to have a bench, you have to have a strategy. You're going to have to play some matchups, and you might have to listen to us when it comes to talking about who to start that week or who to pick up, off the waiver wire as a fill-in or replacement. At your main skill positions, obviously kickers and defenses, for those of you that ride that, that's a little bit different. Some of you might be streaming week to week, but again, we'll touch base at least on the defensive side when we talk about our start sits. Pat, I'm a little nervous. I already see, I'm a Dameon Pierce guy, and I know I already have to sit him this week. So I know some of my leagues are definitely that were circling the drain may just go down completely after this. But after this week, he's back.
Yeah, all of these teams that are on bye, have fantasy relevant players. Obviously, pretty much every team has some fantasy relevant players, but there's a couple on Detroit, quite a few, for Las Vegas Raiders, Tennessee, mainly just Derrick Henry. But Houston has been kind of a surprise as far as some fantasy relevant players. We all knew Brandon Cooks coming into the season was, probably going to be a guy who did fairly well. You were really big on Dameon Pierce, obviously, and so far that seems to be coming to fruition for you. He's been outstanding when he's finally gotten the starting role there in Houston. So we'll be without him for a week, but we'll definitely give you some options and give our listeners some options of some guys that we can use to fill in for Pierce this week. And we'll do our best to help everybody get the best possible lineup in there in the absence of some of these, outstanding players that are going to be missing.
Correct. You want to hit them with the socials?
Yeah. So we are at on Twitter, we are at the 9 Route 1 and at Scott from Delco. Our website is www.the9routeFFB.com. And if you'd like to email the show, you can do that from our website, strangely enough. But you can also just email us at the9routeFFB@gmail.com as well. If you have any, like I said, questions for the show, anything you'd like us to talk about, discuss, any ideas, anything you think would make the show better, make it more of a, good listen for you as an individual. We definitely take all that stuff into consideration. So if you have any suggestions, please shoot them to us. We do appreciate it. All right. So I guess before we jump into our week 6 starts and sits, let's review a little bit. So I went back and I went through weeks 1 through 4. I figured out all of these. I already had the start sit, the correct, like how many we had correct and how many we had incorrect and all that stuff. But I also went back and looked at each individual start and sit head to head to see who, who's like in some instances, like especially this week, we both had both of our starts for quarterbacks were absolutely horrendous. Yours was a little bit more horrendous than mine. So I got the heads up win in that one, even though technically both of us got that one wrong. Jared Goff scored 4.86 and your pick Cooper Rush scored 3.98. So, by a few passing yards there, I got you on that one. So just understand that the heads up numbers are basically just against each other. Somebody's basically going to get a point for almost every single one of those. We did have a tie in week 2. I believe the defenses, because they don't do fractional points. I think we tied on a defense. So right now, heads up, you are ahead 25-24. And like I said, we do have that one tie. As far as our start sits for the year, we're both struggling on the starts, but that's something that we figured out last year because of the way we set our start sits, the number that we set as far as, what constitutes a hit for a start. Our starts are always going to be a lot lower than our sits because the number is so high. We probably need to adjust that number a little bit, bring that down to kind of even out that start sit ratio. So far this year, you have hit the starts 36% of the time. I have hit the starts 25% of the time. We've both hit the sits a little over 54% of the time. And our total overall right and wrong, you right now are at 44%. I am at 38%. Again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the numbers that we use as guidelines for our starts and sits are pretty high. We do try to make sure that we're giving you guys that either finish in the top 12 at quarterback and tight end and also in defense, or in the top 36. So they're basically a flex-worthy player for you in the wide receiver tight end position. But if you think about it, if you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex, really you're looking at like top 60 for a flex to be considered, a viable option, I guess. So we do make it a little bit more difficult on ourselves, which is why our start numbers are a little bit lower than you might imagine. We probably get a little bit more right if you look at, again, if you go as far as like a top 60 or even a top 48 in the flex position. So, but those are the numbers so far. But heads up, it's close. Like I said, we got that one tie that's keeping us apart. But you are ahead by 1. So going into week 6, it's basically anybody's game.
Yeah, so far, it's early, so you never know. You still have a shot to come back, but at the same time, I might look to put my name on that trophy. We'll see.
Oh, there's a trophy? I didn't know that. If there I knew that, I would have tried harder.
Yeah. There's always a trophy. It's football.
Start sits. Are you deferring again to me in the start sits, or do you want to go first? Since I think you did win the heads up this week.
I will go with I will go this time. All right.
I won the heads up. I won the heads up this week, but you had more right than I did, which is strange, but that's the way it worked out.
So I'm better, but not. Okay, cool. Been there, done that, folks. So I guess, yes, I will take the ball in the first half if you don't mind.
Okay. All right.
Speaking of taking the ball, and we're talking about the first matchup of week 6, I'm going to go with Justin Fields versus the Washington Commanders, who really stink at defending against the quarterback position in fantasy football. Giving up about close to 20 points a game to the position, which Justin Fields will be that guy, a little bit of a dual threat quarterback who had a very slow start to the season. Yes, we are aware it was not the expected level of that killer offense that, I don't think anybody expected. They knew the offensive line stunk. But to see Justin Fields slightly improving over the last 2 weeks. Again, both games were losses, but was a little bit more respectable against the Giants, threw for 208 yards and a touchdown. The last 2 weeks, he has been without a pick, which is a huge thing, obviously, for the quarterback position. And over the last 3 weeks, his lowest running total has been 47 yards. So, again, through the dual threat concepts of, running and passing that you need from a quarterback against a defense like this. Right now, it's 11 touchdowns to 1 interception. The Washington Commanders are giving up to the quarterback position. So, again, I feel like this is a game, especially on a short week Thursday nighter. But if the offense is going to start to maybe go through him a little bit stronger, I do like Justin Fields to probably be, maybe a top 15 quarterback this week, finally. And again, this defense will help him do that.
At quarterback this week, I am going to take the low-hanging fruit here, and I'm going to start Geno Smith versus Arizona. I know that Geno Smith is kind of quietly surprised everybody so far this year, but this game against Arizona specifically, Arizona is the 8th worst team versus the quarterback position. They're giving up roughly 19.5 points per game in fantasy. And Geno Smith has been surprisingly good this year, averaging a little over 19.5 fantasy points per game himself. So he currently sits as the QB5 on the season, and that's in your standard 4-point per passing touchdown leagues. Again, if you're one of those teams like I am in a lot of leagues, Geno Smith is a guy, if he's still available on your waiver wire, is a guy you can immediately pick up and start. And I think is a great start this week against an Arizona defense who, like I said, is bottom, quarter of the league versus the quarterback position.
Moving on to running backs. Obviously, we spoke of briefly earlier this week. We know James Conner had a rib injury, but I do think he will overcome it. And I think he will be, at least for me, he's going to be my running back start of the week against the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks, again, we talk about teams that are really bad, on the opposite side of these picks to make sure that it works. And Seattle Seahawks are pretty bad. They are the 5th worst, giving up about 23.8, so about 24 points a game, give or take. When you look at their stats throughout the season, they've given up the most rushing yards and the most rushing yards a game, 170 yards on the ground. They've given up almost 1,000 yards through 5 games on the ground. 30 points a game, almost 31 points a game against an Arizona Cardinal team with a James Conner who, again, I just think he's a very consistent running back. Again, now the injuries sometimes can be a little bit consistent too for him. And we know that last year he had a lot of touchdowns that helped him out. But I think this week he's going to shine through and get a lot of that action. And I think probably shake the rib injury off. If not, I will revisit. We always put a little asterisk next to our guys just in case they're on the fringe of possibly being a little banged up or possibly out for the week. But I like James Conner in that matchup against Seattle.
And I'm going to go with a guy that we mentioned in our waiver wire pickups earlier this week. I'm going to go with Ramondre Stevenson versus Cleveland. Stevenson was already starting to take over a larger percentage of the snaps in New England. But now that there's a chance that Damian Harris may miss the game with that hamstring injury, I just feel like, even if he is active, it's going to be more of the Ramondre show than Damian Harris. And if he's inactive, Ramondre Stevenson gets, pretty much the lion's share of the work in that offense. So pair that with the Cleveland defense that has ranked 30th against the running back position, giving up almost 30 fantasy points per game. And that's just a recipe for a huge week for Ramondre Stevenson. So again, if Harris is out, especially love Stevenson, but even if he's not, I think if Harris was completely healthy, both running backs, this could be one of those games where, the 4 running backs, the 2 on each side could just trade blows back and forth and ended up being a fairly high scoring game with not a lot of passing involved in it, which is very rare to see in the NFL. But Ramondre Stevenson definitely has the ability to put up a ton of points this week against Cleveland.
My wide receiver start this week. Now I'm going to be playing just a hunch. I think quietly a lot of people expected a lot out of DJ Moore this season. It wasn't going to happen with Baker Mayfield. It wasn't going to happen with Sam Darnold. And I think a lot of things shook up there. For those of you that follow a lot of the media stuff there was a little bit of an interview where, they kind of caught him off guard with a question about, what's holding you back. And he handled it gracefully, didn't really throw anybody under the bus there. But I think right now with PJ Walker filling in right now, not a name that's going to light the world on fire, but he's going up against the Los Angeles Rams this week, who aren't really doing that well to slow down wide receivers. Jalen Ramsey's been taken to task a few times by some of the bigger names. They are right now about the 5th worst defense against wide receiver position in fantasy football. That's obviously not good. That's not going to it's not going to get you where you need to be, but it's going to get DJ Moore where he needs to be. And I think with PJ Walker only having 2 NFL starts in those games, DJ Moore 11 catches on 18 targets for 151 yards. So I think PJ Walker knows who the best wide receiver on the field is. And I think you're going to see maybe a little bit of an uptick starting this week. DJ Moore, I love him against the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, apparently a reporter questioned Baker Mayfield about his starting job, which he didn't take too kindly to, but the way he's been playing this year, I think
he stinks, Moore man. He stinks. He's horrible. Just can't stick to commercials. Moore would mind. No, not at all.
Yeah, I've actually said that before. I'm like, if this guy concentrated, spent as much time being good at football as he did, making commercials, he might actually be worth the money they're paying him. But I don't hate it. I have DJ Moore in our league of record, so I actually am kind of rooting for this one. But I'm going to go with Juju Smith-Schuster against Buffalo. I know that Smith-Schuster has been a little bit disappointing so far this year, and Buffalo has actually been very good versus opposing wide receivers, ranking as the 6th best versus that position. But they haven't faced an offense like the Chiefs yet this year. Kansas City is the 6th highest scoring team in the league and has only turned the ball over 4 times so far in 5 games. I expect this game to be a shootout, kind of like their AFC divisional matchup was last year. And it looks like Vegas sees it the same way. This game has the highest over-under of all the games in Week 6 at 53.5 points. And honestly, I'd be willing to bet that line goes up as the week goes on because I can see people just betting the over on that 53.5, even as big as that line is. I think last year in that game that went into overtime, it was somewhere in the 70s. I think was finished 30, was it 38, 35, something like that? Or
yeah,
they won by a touchdown. So it was 40. I don't remember the score of the game, but it was like in the 70s or 80. So I can see that line going up even higher. I think in order for the Chiefs to hang with the Bills, they're going to need to be firing on all cylinders. And that means that Juju's going to have to make some plays in this game. And I think that, in these tough matchups and these matchups that, made to be what decides home field advantage in the playoffs, these games are huge. And I think that, everybody needs to step up. And I believe that Juju is going to be able to do that this week. This is kind of gut versus gut in our wide receiver starts this week because neither of the numbers really say that these are great starts or the situations. But I have a gut feeling that Juju is going to show up in a big way in Week 6.
So, tight end position. We did speak about a little bit of an injury issue with Pat Freiermuth, left the game with a concussion, entered one Zach Gentry for Pittsburgh. So regardless of who it is, obviously I'd lean a little stronger for Pat Freiermuth, who has, obviously the upside there and is the number 1 tight end in Pittsburgh. But if he doesn't make it, I would say that Zach Gentry would be also an option against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For the last couple seasons, it's been this way, and it's no slight on that defense. Mike Caldwell has a very aggressive linebacking core background from his days here as a Philadelphia Eagle, as a player, and then from his coaching concepts. So they attack the quarterback. They get in the backfield after the running back. They cause havoc and disrupt. So it does allow for that tight end position, again, over the last few seasons to be something that is a diamond in the rough, in a matchup concept there. So right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have given up the 3rd most receptions to the position with 31, only to be outdone by Arizona and Atlanta. Only a couple touchdowns, but again, that's more of field position and things of such. Kenny Pickett, obviously having a nice, you get to start your first NFL game against the Buffalo Bills and their defense. And next week, you're going to go up against Tampa Bay. That tight end position, I did mention earlier in the week that so far Pickett has established 11 receptions to the position for 93 yards. So he is willing to look there, kind of like safety valve check down stuff. So if they're going to give it to him, he's going to take what he can get while he is probably running for his life. So, him and his little hands better get on the move and take care of business. I can see definitely the Pat Freiermuth more than likely, but if not, Zach Gentry is my tight end start of the week against Tampa Bay.
I'm going to stick with Daniel Bellinger this week against the Baltimore Ravens. I know that the Ravens generally are not terrible against the tight end position. They're pretty bad against wide receiver position, but the Giants just don't have any wide receivers. This has basically been the Saquon Barkley show, like you said in our last episode. It's been the Giants' offense, and I think Bellinger is becoming a bigger part of this offense each week. You saw he had a rushing touchdown this week in London against the Packers. And basically the Giants' formula for winning games has been playing good defense and just giving Saquon Barkley the ball as many times as he can handle. I don't think that they can continue to do that because as good as Barkley is, again, you saw him go out with the shoulder. He's a guy who has fought through some injuries in the past. I don't think that they're going to want to continue to give him the ball 25 plus times every single game. It's just too much on a running back. So they got to start getting other guys involved. And with the lack of wide receiver production, I feel like Bellinger is just in the right spot to sort of pick up a lot of that slack in the Giants passing game. And, against a Baltimore secondary who, again, hasn't been terrible against tight ends, but has struggled against the wide receiver position. I think you could see some holes in that defense, and you could see Daniel Jones look into Bellinger quite a few times in that game. And Baltimore's defense gives up quite a few points as well. So I think they were 8th or 9th in the league in points given up. So definitely an opportunity for Bellinger to get into the end zone again this week against Baltimore.
All right. And we're going to finish out on my starts for the defense. I like, kind of like a little bit, I like the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is going to be a division game against the Indianapolis Colts. Right now, just to take a look at the matchup, Indianapolis is only scoring about 14 points a game, actually just a shade under at 13.8. Meanwhile, Jacksonville on the opposite side is only giving up about 16 points per game. Also, the Colts, which we watched that happen, that game the other night against Denver, who had a very good defense. Jacksonville has a pretty solid squad. Indianapolis is -6 in the turnover battle, so they're willing to give the football up possibly, unfortunately at a rate that may benefit this team. Now, so far on the season, 10 sacks and 7 interceptions as a team for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that's going to continue. I think that, again, maybe not a blowout, but I think they're really going to hold them strong and get to that team. Again, you see a lot of things happening defensively for the Jaguars, who are a lot better than they have been. They are definitely an improved team. Now, they did suffer back-to-back losses. They did struggle against the Houston Texans. That was a division game, and I think that maybe they were looking past them. It was almost like a concept of a trap game, whatever you want to call it, albeit a division trap game. They might have been looking at the Colts as a little bit more of the team to beat. I do like them to try to rebound and right the ship, and I think the Colts might be the team to do it against. So Jacksonville's defense this week, if you can pick them up on a waiver wire, get them as a spot start. But I do like them this week.
And I'm going to go with the Rams against Carolina Panthers. Carolina was already mid-pack against opposing defenses, giving up around 6.4 points per game to the defense. But, with all the turmoil that's going on, them firing their head coach, with Baker Mayfield potentially being out this week, the Panthers were already struggling, and now they have to go through this tough transition in the middle of a week, and then they have to get ready for one of the best defenses in the NFL. I know that the Rams have not looked like that same championship defense that they were last year, but it doesn't take long for good coaching and good players to sort of turn things around. And the Rams really need a get-right game. And I think, unfortunately for Carolina, in the situation they're in, this is kind of just what the doctor ordered for the Rams. And I really think that they're going to mop the floor with the Carolina Panthers this week, unfortunately.
All right. So those were our starts for this week. And now we're going to move into the sits. My sit of the week, and again, it may go against the basics, but I'm going to sit Daniel Jones against the Baltimore Ravens. You might say, really? Seriously? But hear me out. I know Baltimore started the season and still are one of the bottom end statistically against quarterbacks, against any team really on offense. They are still probably the 3rd to 4th worst fantasy football team when it comes to quarterback. But ironically, too, it was a concept, too. I think those first 2 games where they really were just giving up tons and tons and tons of yardage. Over the last couple of weeks, they have been a bit better. They've played really well in 2 games against Buffalo and Cincinnati, where you would expect them to really just kind of maybe get blown away the way their defense has been playing. They only gave up 23 points to the Buffalo Bills, and they only gave up 17 last night in a very knockdown, drag-out win, which was a super revenge game from last season against those Cincinnati Bengals. They will be on the road in New York, which is always a tough place to play, and the Giants are riding a little bit of momentum. They are looking like they're not going to be that bottom feeder in the NFC East anymore. But I do think Daniel Jones is going to struggle a little bit against a defense that's finally starting to get its footing as far as the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't like him this week. I think Daniel Jones is not worthy of a start for those of you that like to maybe catch him or even looking to fill in a replacement this week. Stay away from Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think their receiving core is just too depleted for him to have a lot of good games unless he, has another one of those 2 rushing touchdown games or whatever. He's a tough start every week. So I definitely like that no matter who they're playing. I am going to sit in kind of the same way you went with the 2 tight ends in your start. I'm going to go with the 2 quarterbacks here in my sit. I'm going to sit either quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys this week against Philadelphia Eagles. I think lost in all of the excitement of how good the Eagles offenses look this year is how good their defense has been playing. The Eagles are quietly the 6th in yards given up, 8th in points allowed, and they're tied for 1st in turnovers forced this year with 11. Not to mention that they're only giving up 12.2 points per game to the quarterback position in fantasy. This is just a combination for a really bad game for the Dallas Cowboys offense. Again, whether it's Cooper Rush, who, obviously is not starting caliber quarterback in the NFL, or Dak Prescott, who is going to be coming back off of an injury. They're going to be going up against an Eagles secondary who's been one of the best in the league. The Eagles have been 3rd in time of possession, so they're not even giving the other team's offense a chance to really possess the ball much in these games. And, I think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to be a low-scoring defensive battle. I know the over-under is fairly high in this game because I think a lot of that is because I think Dak is going to be back, and they know how good, both offenses can be with these quarterbacks under center. But I think this is going to be a defensive battle. And, honestly, I don't really like starting anybody in this game. I really don't love a lot of the Eagles starters in this game as well, just the way Dallas's defense has been playing. But I'm not going to sit Jalen Hurts because he's just one of the best players in fantasy football. So
Yes.
give me Dak or Cooper Rush to ride the pine this week for your fantasy football team.
Another guy you might want to think twice about. He's been pretty productive lately, but I don't think it's going to happen this week. Although if this game does go over crazy points, who knows? I could be dead wrong. But I want to sit Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's going up against the Buffalo Bills this week, who we did talk about having arguably the best defense in the league, pound for pound against the running back position. The Buffalo Bills, they don't give up a lot of points to the position. Only about 14, 15 points a game so far. We know they're a good defense. And Edwards-Helaire has struggled at times, but he's had a pretty productive season this year. He stayed healthy. I think this game, I kind of think the defenses might wake up a little bit in this game because of that shootout that they had last year. Maybe play it a little close to the vest. I could be wrong. I know the league wants to see, 150 points combined, a nuts game like we saw last year, with just ripping off touchdowns, that kind of thing. But I think that concept as a whole is going to be tough for him. Again, Buffalo is 3rd best. They're only giving up 77, just about 78 yards a game to opposing running backs. Ironically, right now the Chiefs are, going into Monday night still sitting there with a 65.8 average. So I feel like defenses might play a little bit more of a factor. I don't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire as an RB1 or 2, possibly flex worthy, but Andy might break out the playbook and just start moving carries around, and suddenly everything changes and all bets are off.
I'm going to sit one of the guys again that we mentioned in our waiver wire pickups. I'm going to sit Tyler Algier this week versus San Francisco. Algier does seem to be the lead back in Atlanta for now, but against this stingy San Francisco defense that is 3rd best versus the running back position, I don't really love him this week. Mix in the fact that veteran Damian Williams might be coming back off of IR this week, and Algier could lose some snaps to him. I mean, I don't think that they're going to completely replace Algier as the starter, but if that becomes a 60-40 type thing, mixed in with the fact that you're going against one of the best defenses, maybe the best defense in the league. I mean, I think 49ers and Buffalo are the only 2 that you could probably argue, maybe the Eagles as well, but guys have been really, really good, and San Francisco's been unbelievable. And I think anytime you're going against the 49ers, you already don't want to start, your players against that defense. But the fact that Algier may not even be guaranteed of more than 12 touches is another reason to stay away. So I'm going to sit Tyler Algier this week against the 49ers.
Moving on to our wide receiver sits, I am going to sit a young man named Drake London. Again, hasn't been lighting the world on fire his last 2 games. That being said, again, you're going up, and you just said it, talking about your running back sit, where this San Francisco defense is probably going to be something that carries them throughout the entire season, to say the least. They're 3rd best in the league as far as giving up passing yards. They are a swarming defense to anybody who's coming at them. Right now, they've only given up 2 receiving touchdowns and only about 17, 18 points per game to the entire position. Factor that in with a struggling Atlanta Falcons offense. Drake London was seen limping off a little bit yesterday in the 4th quarter late, but never went to, never got checked out. It was just more of feeling a little banged up. Only thing with him is time will tell if he's got a banged up knee, if he even plays. We'll see. Maybe they hold him out against San Francisco. But if he does play, I don't see him factoring in, or anybody on that offense, Pat. I agree with your running back sit on the Atlanta Falcons. So Drake London, sorry, buddy. Take a seat.
Well, you're going to love my tight end sit when we get there then. So for...
I might do it too. Trust me. Don't worry.
So for my wide receiver sit, I'm going to go with Rashad Bateman versus the Giants. Bateman missed week 5 with a foot injury, so usually that in itself is enough to make me a little leery to play somebody the next week. Now, add that into the fact that you're playing a surprisingly good Giants defense this year. They've been 3rd against the wide receiver position in fantasy. And the fact that Mark Andrews he's really the Ravens' number 1 pass catcher, no matter who their quote-unquote number 1 receiver is. Mark Andrews is the number 1 receiver on that team. Mix in the injury with the fact that, again, Giants have looked really good. I mean, they played the Packers really tough. They've been really good on the defensive side of the ball. Bateman hasn't been. He's had a couple games where he's gotten deep and caught a long pass or touchdown here and there. But against this Giants team, I don't know. This strikes me as one of those games where, like we saw, last night with the Bengals, I feel like this is going to be a struggle for both teams to score. The Giants are very good on defense, and they're not very good on offense. And so I think, this is going to be one of those low-scoring games. And I really, other than, obviously you're starting Lamar Jackson every week. You're starting Mark Andrews, but J.K. Dobbins, no thanks. Rashad Bateman, nope. I really don't want any of the other options in Baltimore except for Andrews and Jackson. So I'm going to sit Rashad Bateman this week.
It is a 2-man team there on offense. We witnessed that last night.
Yeah.
Tight end sit of the week for me. Again, for some people, like, well, yeah, duh, it's a no-brainer just based on performance. But Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots, this week they go up against the Cleveland Browns, who are one of the toughest against that tight end position. Now, obviously, as a whole, like he has not been performing as well as he did last season. And again, that was a lot to do with touchdown catches. And again, that regression is going to bring somebody down to earth. Obviously, with Bailey Zappi, he targeted Hunter Henry 5 times, 4 catches for 54 yards. So he had a nice game. Again, obviously in a blowout win against the Detroit Lions, 29-0 shutout. This week, though, going on the road to Cleveland, and I think he's going to struggle a little bit to be productive. That team as a whole does not give up points in fantasy. They are in the top 7. Actually, number 6. Cleveland Browns are giving up under 4 points a game to the tight end position. They haven't given up a touchdown yet. They have only given up 14 total receptions. So it just shows that they will not let quarterbacks take it easy and just look to pick them apart down the field. I think Hunter Henry struggles, and I think you could do a lot better finding a replacement for him this week, waiver wire, or possibly a backup on your bench. But Hunter Henry not happening for me this week at tight end.
Yeah, and as I alluded to a little bit earlier, I am going to sit Kyle Pitts. I know I already took a Falcon in this sit segment, but this San Francisco defense has just been so good so far this year that I think it warrants 2 sits this week. Pitts is also coming off a missed game, kind of like Bateman, so not super thrilled to play somebody coming off of injury, even if it's not considered a major thing. And let's be honest, I mean, even in the games that Kyle Pitts has played this year, he hasn't been great for fantasy anyway. So a matchup against the 4th ranked defense versus the tight end position doesn't have me feeling any better about playing him this week. I could see Atlanta not scoring a touchdown this week at all, period. It's just, I think it's got the feel of one of those ugly, low-scoring game where neither of these teams scores a ton of points, and the Niners end up winning like 13-3 or something like that.
Last but not least, my defensive sit of the week, and I am, maybe call it the homer call, but the Dallas Cowboys have won 4 games in a row, and they've kind of done it on the back of their defense. It was a close win, Cooper Rush's first full week against the Cincinnati Bengals. They've only given up 17, 16, 10 to the Commanders, and 10 to the Rams, who we know have been struggling as a team, that post-Super Bowl hangover with some injuries, especially on the offensive line. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to be the best team they have faced so far. That loss against the Buccaneers beginning of the year, we know that team is not quite what they've been. Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are just flying by, literally flying by a lot of teams. They have the second best offense in the league right now behind the Buffalo Bills, who we know what they can do. Passing and running the ball, the Eagles combine for about 420 yards a game. They're getting about 27 points a game. And the Eagles, again, some people might question, who they've played and things of that nature. But that was a kind of a statement win to go out to Arizona on the road and beat a Cardinals team in their stadium that the Eagles fans took over. Now you come home, you got the monster Sunday Night Football game against the Dallas Cowboys. This game is, for Philadelphia, it's as big as it gets. And for Dallas, I just can't see them holding this team back. I think that the torch has kind of finally been passed. I don't care if Dak's playing or not. I think Jalen Hurts and the boys are definitely going to take it to them. And again, I think the Cowboys struggle as a whole to contain this Eagles offense. Do not start them against the Eagles. They have no shot.
Yeah, I'm going to be sitting a defense that has also been very good so far this year. I'm going to sit the Bills this week versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bills defense has been outstanding once again this year. They ranked second in yards allowed. They're tied for first in points allowed and turnovers forced with the Eagles at 11. But the Chiefs offense has also once again been really good this year, ranking 6th in points scored. And like I said earlier, have only turned the ball over 4 times so far this year. I've already mentioned the over-under in this game being the highest of the week, which usually doesn't bode well for either defense involved. Usually a bunch of scoring. There's always the opportunity in every game. It doesn't matter who's playing for, a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown or something like that. Those fluky plays you can never bank on. But generally in these games where, both teams are by the Vegas Sportsbook slated to have over 25 points apiece, definitely one of those games that you want to stay away from starting defenses in, because it's probably going to be points being scored left and right. And really, again, neither team really turns the ball over all that much. So not that you would start anybody against the Bills offense, but definitely wouldn't start the Chiefs this week either, as good as they have been in fantasy. But I am going to, I took a few sits that I thought were, maybe easy sits in the Cooper Rush and the Tyler Algier sit. So I'm going to go ahead and sit the Buffalo Bills and take a defense that's been really good and suggest putting them on the bench in week 6 against the Chiefs. All right, so that is our starts and sits for week 6. We should probably, we should throw this up on Twitter and see, get some comments here, see what people think, who's got the better start sits this week. I think that would be interesting.
Hey, yeah, let the public decide. Oh,
yeah. See how hard it is to pick the right side when you put your stuff out there. I did, there's a lot of each week there's a lot of smacking myself in the head, like, what was I thinking starting that guy or sitting that guy or whatever. But you go into it with the proper process and looking at the right information, and you do the best you can to, I know I do the best I can to make these start sits guys who not only are players that I believe you should be starting and sitting, but also guys that I think a lot of fantasy managers are going to be sort of on the fence about. And I think that, in these instances where you are on the fence, it's nice to, hear somebody else's opinion, somebody else's perspective, especially if it's one that maybe you're thinking in your head and you just want somebody to sort of corroborate your thoughts for you. So, I do take a lot of pride in these. And like I said, I'm a little disappointed in the numbers as far as the start sits go, but I do realize coming into the season this year, based on, how we did last year with our start sits, I do realize that what we use as a barometer for our start to be a hit is pretty tough. I mean, you basically have to take, because like I said, we're not taking guys who are, we're not taking Patrick Mahomes and we're not taking Lamar Jackson as our start of the week. We're taking guys who are legitimate plug and play guys who you may be starting in your flex, or defense that you may be holding on to or may have started last week and you're wondering if you should, pick a different defense up off of the waiver wire. So, we're trying to, make sure that we give you information. We're not just giving you the easy, especially for the starts, because those are the guys who, like I said, you may really be having a tough decision on your hands with. So we try to give you guys that are really good starts, and our numbers as far as what we use to determine those start sits are pretty lofty, because we want to give you winning players. We don't want to just give you run of the mill. Oh, you said start this guy and he scored 10 points. Oh, that's great. Like, he didn't kill you, but he didn't help you either. You know what I mean? Before we head out, I just want to thank Mickey's Protocol Pub in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Mickey's at 327 East Main Street in Tuckerton. Great place to go watch a game. Go watch all the games on Sunday. And don't forget, the kids eat free Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday with the purchase of an adult entree. Get yourself out there to Mickey's, grab a cold beer and some great food when you get the opportunity to do so. And like I said, head out on Sunday and catch some of the games. You may even run into me out there. I do frequent Mickey's every once in a while on a Sunday when I'm feeling a little saucy. So you got anything you want to throw out there before we head out for the night?
Well, again, just want to thank everybody for listening. Obviously, we have a lot of fun doing this, and having our little contest of who's right and who's wrong, and starts and sits, and try to get some of the public involved a little bit on that level. But it's a lot of fun to be able to do this on a week-to-week basis for both of us. And again, we couldn't do it without you folks. We really appreciate you listening here at the 9 Route. And again, hit us up on social media, ask us some questions. Again, the 9 Route at www.the9routeFFB.com. That has the link to all our socials as well. You can email us directly at the9routeFFB@gmail.com if you want to ask any direct questions. Again, or on Twitter at the 9 Route, or myself, I am at Scott from Delco. Again, you can hit us up with some fantasy football questions, comments, concerns, and we would be happy to oblige our expert opinion from the 9 Route. For Pat, I am Scott. This will do it for week 6. We'll talk to you next week with the ending of week 6 going into week 7. Hopefully you survive your bye weeks, and we'll see you then. Peace.